Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN members Shane Mason and Ayers, founders of Brooklyn FI, on the show today. Shane started his career on the tax side of the business at PwC before working in a smaller tax practice and eventually launching his own. He quickly realized that his clients were getting really bad financial advice, so he began exploring ways to better serve them, and the answer ended up being become a financial planner. AJ went on a search for her own financial planner before turning up empty and ended up launching a podcast to basically share what she was learning about personal finance. She had Shane on her podcast, and they formed a friendship that ultimately led them to start the firm together in 2018. They have experienced explosive growth, signing their first client in May of 2018, and they have 70 households today, just 18 months later. We talked about how they use the clients of the tax practice to ultimately grow the financial planning firm, how they balance working in both of the practices, and overall how they split duties as co-founders. Another topic listeners will really appreciate was our conversation about their experiencing of imposter syndrome and things they've done, like over-servicing their clients that have been sort of overcompensating for that. They really are an inspiring partnership and have great things ahead of them. You don't want to miss a second of this episode. When it comes to compliance, most financial advisors want to run in the opposite direction. But compliance doesn't have to be that big scary monster hiding under your bed. Our free risk assessment guide will walk you through how to perform a risk assessment one step at a time. Learn how to perform a proper risk assessment and get access to our risk matrix and risk assessment table worksheets developed by XY Planning Network's in-house compliance team. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/risk assessment to download your copy today. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/222. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with AJ and Shane. Hey, AJ and Shane, welcome to the show. Thank you both so much for being on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yep, our pleasure.
So right before I hit the record button, AJ, you said y'all had literally listened to every episode of the podcast, which is something like 230 hours of content. Is that true?
I would say 95% of the episodes, for sure.
I would say 100%. For sure.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. I think you may qualify for biggest fan, which is awesome. So, well, yeah, let's give listeners a quick overview of the business. So, where are you located, number of clients, when you got started, if you have a niche market, and then we will dig into the details.
Sure. A high-level overview. We're called Brooklyn FI. We're based in Brooklyn, New York. We work out of a WeWork in South Williamsburg. We have a private office. We meet clients in conference rooms, which our younger clients seem to like a lot. As of yesterday, as of this morning, I should say, we have 72 households, which is 100 clients exactly. So we have some clients that are couples, but some that are individuals. And yeah, there's two of us. We're maybe a unique firm in that way. We started the firm in 2017, and we've been going strong ever since.
So you said you meet in conference rooms. So is that like a WeWork or a Regus type setup, or less of a brand name?
Yeah, it's a WeWork.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk more about that. All right, so 72 clients, 72 households, 100 clients, which is awesome. That's a huge milestone. You can celebrate again at 100 households. Cool. So let's just dig into a little bit of career path. So AJ, we'll start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of your path and how you came to be an owner of a financial planning firm?
Yeah, I think my path is probably a little bit different than a lot of people's. You hear the word career changer thrown around a lot. I spent my early career working in book publishing. I was a commissioning editor at a company called Bloomsbury, where I worked on books about popular music and sound studies, like pretty high level academic music stuff. And then from there, I went into more music journalism. I've been a freelance writer my whole adult life, writing about music and food, things like that. But when I came into music journalism, I got a job at a tech company called Bandcamp. And tech companies pay a lot more than publishers do. So my salary doubled. And I became very interested in personal finance by looking for my own financial planner. When I started to find someone to help me out with how to invest my newfound wealth and my newfound savings, I didn't really find anyone out there who was really speaking my language. I was reading a lot of stuff about how the markets work. And I was like, I'm a journalist, I'm kind of a smart person, and none of this is really connecting with me. I think I could probably do a better job of this myself. So I started a podcast called Money Splained, where I interviewed a bunch of experts. I talked to Heather Jarvis. I talked to Shane Mason. Actually, the first time we ever met was when Shane was a guest on my podcast. It was like the third episode.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so podcasting runs very deep in our veins here at Brooklyn FI. Mm-hmm. And, when Shane and I met, we just totally hit it off. I was sort of interested in thinking about a career change. Shane was already pretty well into starting the firm. He was working as a CPA at that time. He'll go into that in a minute, I'm sure. And we just spent that summer kind of talking. Actually, it was because Shane was about to go to Japan, and I had been to Japan a few times. So we were in a meetup to talk about some tips for food and lodging in Japan, but we ended up spending that time just talking about starting a firm together. And that was kind of it. And in the car ride home, I went onto NYU's CFP program site and signed up. And the rest is history.
Oh, this is what I love about career paths, where it's like, I'm going to make a small shift. I love that. All right. So Shane, can you tell me about sort of your path and where that sort of merged with AJ's?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I just got to say how sincerely alarming it was when I told AJ, I was like, well, if you're serious about this personal finance thing, career changer, you should go to CFP. And then I got an email like 2 days later, like, you've been registered for the NYU CFP program. I was like, okay, I guess we're partners now. Here we go.
Yeah, I think early on we sort of connected because we're both really hard workers, and we both really kind of were like, all right, let's do it. Okay, are we doing this? Are we sure? And so I think that was like a lot of the driver for the initial firm launch.
Yeah, AJ's pretty badass. She's written a book. She's got a great blog. She's done a lot of things. This is her latest move in her career, and she's doing exceptionally well at it. My personal background is I'm a CPA. Went to Ole Miss, bachelor's, master's in accounting. Lots of fun there. Went to PwC in Austin after that. Hated that. Was there for about 3 years. Dropped out of accounting for a little while actually after that before working at a mid-sized firm. Realized you can work with individuals instead of public corporations and kind of fell back in love with it. I've always been a tax guy, by the way, and loved working with individuals. Started my own practice on the side in 2014 called Mason Tax. Started out with 15 friends and family, went to 30, went to 60 year after year. And then in 2015, 16, I realized that a lot of my tax clients that I cared deeply about were getting really, really bad financial planning advice. A lot of annuities, a lot of whole life insurance policies, mutual funds with load fees for people in their 20s. And I was like, okay, here's an opportunity to move into a market that is rife with conflicts of interest. I've always been an entrepreneur and realized I was going to leave that tax practice that I was working at, that firm I was working at, to start my own, and thought, hey, I'm masochistic. Why don't I round out tax season with a financial planning firm for the rest of the year? Met AJ right before I was going to launch a firm and realized how much more fun, and I'm a sole proprietor of my tax firm, and you can only go so far by yourself. And realizing how incredible AJ is and realizing how great of a complementary partner she would be, we started the firm together, Brooklyn FI together, and it's been a ton of fun since then.
So I'll ask you both this question, but Shane, we'll start with you. What can you tell me what you feel like your background as a CPA, how that has contributed to the firm? And in the end, like it feels a little bit more natural, but AJ's going to have to answer the same question, because I feel like there's so many things that you learned that through that process, had you started out just doing financial planning and never being a CPA in a tax practice or a PwC, you would have never learned or been able to bring to the firm. So can you just sort of explain what you feel like that background gave you in terms of preparation for starting and running the firm?
Yeah. I've heard you ask other people this question, like never working in a financial planning firm, how does that impact the firm that you open? And it has made it very hard, for sure. It's like I feel like we're over delivering on everything to compensate for the fact that we've never worked in a financial planning firm before. It's something that we have to work on for sure in terms of scaling back the level of detail that we go into it. We're definitely compensating for the imposter syndrome that we had when we first started. When I got my CFP education finished, when I passed the exam in 2016, I started doing ad hoc financial planning for my tax clients on like an hourly rate. And I realized that this is not a transactional business at all, like doing a tax return is. You gather the documents, you complete the return, you submit it to the IRS, you watch for notices, you're done. You get paid and you're done with that. This is way different. I was trying to do investment strategies for people on an hourly basis and like, oh, well, wait, I forgot about this other thing that's going on in your life. We need to address that. And then you just realize it's impossible to do it with the model that exists in the tax land. And actually, since working on Brooklyn FI, on Brooklyn FI for the past 2 years, I've realized a much better model for my tax firm. And the two have been very complementary businesses. And now I'm circling back at this point to get my tax firm under control and actually moving it all into a monthly retainer model, which I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Oh, very cool. I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah. I finally feel like I have a handle on my life after now circling back around to the retainer model.
I'll also add that I think your background working in those very specific for CPA firms that you worked within and having those maybe negative experiences really challenged you to come up with an experience that was both, it was better for clients, it was better for a firm, and it was scalable. The backbone of Brooklyn FI is built on client experience. And I think Shane's background in tax prep has really helped that.
Awesome. So AJ, can you tell me a little bit about how you feel like your background has played a part in the work that you're doing now? Because obviously you have some awesome skills that have led to all of this. So tell me a little bit about how you've connected that career change and that background that you had.
I would say mostly our office playlist is pretty fire. No.
Very, very important to have the right music.
No, I think, I'm a writer, so I think having that background, being able to communicate with clients, I would say our client correspondence is probably lengthier than it needs to be, but communicating complicated financial ideas or even just explaining compound interest to someone for the first time, having that writing background, I think has helped our clients really understand what we're trying to do for them and with them.
So is it fair to say then, AJ, you're doing a lot of the marketing? I mean, because you've talked about the podcast, writing a book, and your skills at writing, like, are you primarily responsible for business development and marketing, or do y'all share that task?
We definitely share it, and we're actually not doing a ton of marketing. The book that Shane was referring to was my prior career called How to Write About Music, so not related to personal finance at all.
Oh, yeah.
And the podcast is kind of its own separate thing. It's been helpful for marketing. We've had a few prospects say like, oh, I listened to your podcast, which has been great, but it's definitely not a driver for Brooklyn FI. Our marketing has been very minimal, to be honest. We can talk about that later, but most of our referrals come from existing clients. A few have come from the XY network, a few from NAPFA, but it's just where people are finding us, I think, because of our location. That's a big part of it, being in Brooklyn.
Yeah, there's a lot of people to go find a financial advisor, and quite frankly, a surprising low number of fiduciary fee-only financial advisors in that area as well. It's not like you're competing with 1,000 advisors that are doing work the right way, which could be based on the population there. Yeah,
and Shane had an established tax practice, so it was very natural to say like, well, I also have started a financial planning firm, so a lot of clients have come over from that, and the two companies have great synergy between the two of them.
Yeah, we get a lot of people that come in for, hey, Shane, can you help me figure out these incentive stock option thing? My taxes are going to be weird this year. And then we open up the hood on that. It's like, well, maybe we should talk about, you've got $2 million of incentive stock options here. You've got other fish to fry, bigger fish to fry. And then it's just a natural segue. You start with a small project, like a tax return or a tax projection. And then you build a little trust, and then it's an easy upsell. I don't want to say easy upsell, but it's a natural upsell to, well, what about buying a home? What about moving out of the state? What about all these other plans that you might have? Getting married, having a family, this and that.
So talk to me about that. So you have the tax practice, you're doing a lot of transactional relationships. Obviously the planning questions come up, and so you start doing planning. How do you have the conversation with those clients that say, hey, this is sort of the direction that we're going. This is what, we're going to be offering more services, or is it, I don't know. How do you manage that conversation to be sure it goes well and that it doesn't just feel like a constant upsell?
Oh yeah. We're not very salesy. We'd like to just tell them we do this. If you'd like to book a meeting, we send them an email with a link to book a discovery call. It's not very salesy. It's like a lot of my tax clients I've had for 4 years at this point. So they trust me. It's they've been asking me for it. I mean, like routinely, they'll ask me financial planning questions in the past, and that's when I was getting the trigger, the like, oh, I should be able to answer these questions. Whereas a lot of other CPAs, I think, just give bad answers to those questions. But yeah, it's not a big upsell. And then the more that we focus on our niche, how many times are we going to say that word today? The more we focus on the niche, the easier it is. Really, it's like, oh, here's all the things that we can do for you within the stock option space or within the business owner space. We can help you navigate a sale in 10 years, how to hire employees, or we can help you navigate a diversification strategy. And you can just speak with confidence when you only do a few things very well. So yeah. And by the way, the tax practice is separate. It's like they're two separate.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they are separate. We're trying to navigate that. That has been one of the weirdest wedges between AJ and I. And that's like, as partners in the Brooklyn FI, but not partners on the tax side, it's like, where do I spend my time? Like, how do we track that? How do we make sure that the partners are both happy with what's going on? Like, business development does happen on the Mason tax side, but it's a lot of work doing 500 1040s. So like, we're trying to get that under control.
So how do the two firms interact? So you have two separate entities. I guess if you have a financial planning client that needs their taxes done, does the company pay? Does one company pay the other? Does the client just pay two different entities?
Yeah, currently we keep them separate, and financial planning clients get a 50% discount on their tax return if it is prepared by Mason Tax and it's invoiced separately. That is very much on the table for change for this upcoming tax season.
Yeah, we don't like to nickel and dime our clients.
Yeah.
That is quite the discount. I like it. She strong-arm you into this discount, or? No, that makes sense. So they are being separately invoiced, but in the end, like, they're working together. And what percentage of those clients that you're working with on the financial planning side also use your tax services?
Probably like 90.
Yeah, 90.
Okay, so vast majority. But you said, did you say 500 1040s? Was that a joke?
No, it's more like 400 1040s. It's more like 410. We have a staff that help us out. We have a tax manager and we have an associate that splits his time 20 hours to tax and 20 hours to planning. And we're going to be hiring this upcoming tax season.
Okay. Yeah. The rule of thumb I hear is like 250-ish tax returns per CPA. So that's a pretty healthy number for you to be, if you're the only CPA, to be ultimately reviewing and signing off on.
Like I said, we're trying to figure out a path forward.
We would like to reduce the hours that we're in the office for 2020. That's a goal for us.
Yeah. So how do you balance Q1? Because this is, quite frankly, this is one of the reasons we're launching our white label tax prep service, is just because we have some advisors like you that are already doing the taxes, others that want to do it. And everyone says the same thing, like Q1's terrible. And, how do you balance growing the financial planning firm while, also, doing all the taxes? Does everything just shut down for Q1, or have you found a way to balance the time?
Well, it's like, what's going to shut down? Is the client service going to shut down? Well, we're doing all their tax returns in Q1. Well, is business development going to shut down? Well, Mason Tax is a feeder to Brooklyn FI. So yes, we're insane during Q1, but it doesn't fully shut down the company. We would like to make it easier on us personally.
Yeah. I think we shut off new clients in like March. So then we had a long backlog, almost like a waiting list for clients to sign up in May after tax season. And then we kind of hit another snag there when we were doing all the follow-up from tax season, because tax season doesn't end on April 15th. Yeah. Everyone needs everything after file an extension. I need my return 2 weeks later. So there was, the post-tax season was almost more intense for Brooklyn FI than during tax season. Yeah. And I'm an enrolled agent, so I also prepare returns as well.
Right.
So y'all are both going back and forth, working on both businesses then.
Yep.
Yeah. So like I said, it's always interesting because it is a great feeder, but it's also like, and maybe you can answer this question for yourself, is the tax business long-term going to build the financial planning firm, or is it going to distract from the firm? Or is that what you're really trying to figure out at this point?
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. We're really trying to move away from individuals, and I don't know how much we should talk about. But we're trying to strip away transactional, like one-time 1040s, and build sincerely the same model that we have at Brooklyn FI, where it's monthly retainers for fewer people for higher sale, like higher revenue, and you have a more of an advisory relationship with those clients. So focusing on the KPIs of their business, helping them grow their business, how to hire a new employee, are we going to open up a new location? We do have an outsourced CFO solution that we rolled out this summer, and some of our financial planning clients who own businesses, sometimes they have 7-figure businesses and they need CFO services. So now we're doing the bookkeeping and the CFO services for their business and also handling their personal side. So in theory, we can take them from, the business to their personal to their retirement. And we really want to be a one-stop shop for a specific type of clientele. And we even handle the 401ks. We open up the 401ks for a client that has 30 participants, and we're the advisors on that 401k. So, yeah.
So you just have a couple of things going on, is what you're saying. Y'all are looking for things to do.
Yeah. Yes, we're masochistic.
Yeah.
No, so all of this is awesome. So talk to me about the ongoing, the switches that you're making on the tax side. So tax is known as a transactional business. Tax firms sell at one-time revenue because they are so one-time, or 1x revenue is sort of the valuation, because the one-time revenue is just, it's hard to predict, but it's not an ideal way to build a business as you're seeing and you see the benefits of the recurring revenue at Brooklyn FI. So what's the shift that you're either have made or are making that you were referencing around, trying to make that business more recurring?
Yeah. So there is, believe it or not, there's an XYPN for accountants, which I did not know about until this year. And I actually reached out to someone at XYPN, maybe Maddie. And I was like, Maddie, you guys should start an XYPN for accountants to set them all up.
People ask me that all the time. And I'm like, I don't know anything about accounting. I can't start XY for CPAs, but it's good to know there is one.
Yeah, it's called Rootworks. There's this guy, Darren Root, that has been a CPA forever, and he started essentially the same thing for accountants. And I joined it this summer, and they're helping me revamp. They told me no new 1040s, only business owners, and you need to drop X amount of them. So you just have a recurring stream of revenue, just like you have with a monthly retainer in the financial planning space, so that we can predict things and we're on top of people. There's a lot of communication. It's easier to forecast cash flow and hours per week, and tax season is not insane. So yeah, we're going to be dropping a lot of 1040 clients and adding more business owners to, tilt the work into summer and winter instead of all being during tax season in the spring.
So are you literally going to have them paying you monthly, or does it just turn into recurring revenue because these are clients that will come back year after year?
Oh yeah, no, they pay us monthly. So it starts at $400 a month, and I can send you a link to the website where that will be up shortly, like the fee model for that. So there's like a Goldilocks package where it's $400, $1,200, or $2,200 a month, depending on if they want this or that service. And there is bookkeeping, payroll, meetings with the CFO where we talk about their KPIs. We use QBO and Fathom together to build out projections. Yeah, it's just like they pay us monthly. We get a credit card authorization form from them, and then it's just recurring subscription.
I love the term Goldilocks model. I also called good, better, best, but I've never heard Goldilocks before. That's a really funny but very accurate way of describing that. So switching back to the financial planning firm, can you talk to me about how the two of you split duties? I mean, anytime you have a co-founder and you have a partner that's working in the practice, there's going to be overlap and disagreements and that sort of thing. So can you talk about how the two of you, if you have segmented accountabilities inside the firm?
Yeah, I mean, we have an interesting structure because I was working on my CFP as the firm was launching. So we actually had an apprentice relationship, and I got my CFP experience working in the firm and building the firm. So a lot of it was, we built the processes together, the plans got built out. The plans have evolved so much in the past 2 years. I focus a lot on the actual plan building, the client emails, the client interfacing, follow-ups after meetings, booking meetings, a lot of the kind of day-to-day operations. My title before I got my CFP, just to differentiate us, was head of operations. But it really is truly a partnership. We are in every meeting together. We sit right across from each other. There are two of us, but we very much act as the firm.
Yeah, AJ does the majority of the work, to put it succinctly. As head of operations, she's in charge of, there's get organized meetings, staying on top of all the clients. Anything you would experience when you first started a firm as an associate, you do the majority of the work, and she's done an incredible job. And she did not mention that she passed her CFP exam last week. So she is now.
Oh, congratulations, AJ. Huge.
Yeah. So she'll be on the website soon.
That's awesome. Nice work.
Yeah, website.
Yeah,
not ours. Yeah, she's
already on Brooklyn FI. Yeah, she gets to jump up on XY now. Thank you for the delineation there. I would have gotten at least one email about that.
Yeah, AJ stays in the office. She's not on the website yet.
So what about the actual, there's the financial planning side, which it sounds like the two of you are very much working hand in hand on that. What about the run the business stuff and business decisions? I mean, is everything at this point a joint decision and a conversation? Have you delegated or assigned duties that, hey, Shane goes and does this stuff and AJ, you go and do this stuff, and you don't really have to talk to each other about it?
It's very collaborative. I think a lot of decision making is shared. I think we've toyed with the idea over the growth of the business of hiring a coach, going through some kind of program. And we've just honestly been just busy with client work and building the firm that we haven't made that step. We're definitely considering that. But yeah, it's very collaborative.
Yeah, I mean, we've been super busy. We raised our fees many times to try to stem the flow of clients onboarding, but it just hasn't stopped. We went from $1,900 a year, which was obviously too low, but we just wanted to sharpen our knife, so to speak. Now we're up to $5,900 per year, and we're still signing people. So
and that's your minimum fee. It does go up from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some clients that pay $1,000 a month. Do we have someone more than that? No? Okay. $1,000 a month, I think, is our highest fee.
So let's talk about the growth, because it looks like you got your first client in May of 2018, but you launched a few months before that. Is that accurate?
Well, what AJ said we started in 2017 is when we formed an LLC. Tax season happened while we were registering with New York. So we got the blessing from New York to be an RIA on 4/20/2019, which we thought was funny.
We celebrated.
Yeah, which is perfect timing, right after tax season, day after my birthday. So yeah, we signed our first client on May 13th. Yeah.
So really, once you had some headspace to start focusing on the firm, things got started.
Yeah. Well, we started to build out, because we never worked at a firm before. So we were really trying to figure out how to do this, mechanically, what are we really doing? And I love that you hired a workflow coach and a process and a workbook coach. That's a huge hire. I'm glad you did that for everyone that's coming on board now. For us, we got to give a shout out to Eric Gabor and Sean Tidlaska for helping us out with just forming a basic, here's what you put in front of a client. We know how to talk and talk about all these things and help develop them, but actually having a deliverable that is presentable and an outline. Yeah, so that was definitely $1,900 per year land when we were developing that. And now we have sharpened our knife. And yeah.
So you started out, so you got your first client in May of 2018. So, I mean, we're only 18 months into that. And you said you're already at 70 households. So how many of those came over? Did you get sort of an initial pop from the tax practice and the first, 20 clients signed up from tax? Or what was sort of the ramp up period from a client perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think tax season 2018 was meeting with clients, doing their returns and saying, by the way, in a couple weeks, we're going to be starting this financial planning firm. We can book a meeting with you now. We'll be ready to go. So initially, a lot of clients were coming over from tax. We've had two very specific sources of referrals that have been amazing, sort of one within each of our niches, one creative person and one person who works in tech. So that sort of got the word of mouth referral machine going really early. And then, we have had a lot of success with SEO. We've had a lot of clients just find us on Yelp and Google. But initially, everything sort of stacked up after tax season and it was just off to the races.
Mm-hmm. I was I've been warning people for 2 years, I'm going to do this financial planning firm. I promise you. And then that was the season where we're here we go. And it got us off.
Yeah, I mean, while you quote unquote started from scratch, you really did have a base to grow from, which is fantastic. I mean, I think that's a huge benefit. And there are a lot of tax accountants out there that are wanting to transition into financial planning, that want a more relationship based conversation, and tax is at the center of financial planning. I would say it's the next ring out from just the actual relationship side. So there's just so much there, and it's such a natural transition. But it sounds like you were able to you obviously were able to make this transition well. A lot of CPAs, I think, struggle with moving that conversation, but I'm not sure what the difference is, but maybe it's just your passion for financial planning ultimately.
Maybe I was working in the service industry from age 15 to 22 or 23.
Yeah. And those things make a huge difference.
Yeah. Being a waiter and a bartender helps with conversations.
So if you struggle to talk to people, go be a bartender.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Every financial planner should do at least a couple shifts as a bartender or barback.
Yeah. Was it Sally Krawcheck that said that being a waiter is a great first job for anyone because it forces you to sell and grow.
No, I remember those days. I hated being a server. I did not enjoy small talk, which in the South, it's all about small talk and sitting in the booth with someone. If you did that in certain areas of the country, it wouldn't go well. But so just, and I wouldn't know this except from your Instagram page. So the two of you are in a relationship together as well. Is that correct?
No. No, we're not.
And that makes you look married. And I didn't think that was the case, but okay. Your Instagram's throwing me off. So you are not in a relationship. So skip the next set of questions.
No. Oh, I think you're referring to a photo of us at my wedding, which was in.
See, it looks like the two of you are getting married at that wedding. So
Oh, really?
Oh, interesting. I think maybe I'll change that caption. It was AJ got married, not we got married.
No, let's set it right because it's intriguing.
All right, fair enough. Sorry. So AJ, when did you get married?
I got married in December of 2018.
Okay, so in the middle of wow. So you launched a firm and were planning a wedding. Tell me about that. Like this, it's one of these interesting things that our members tend to be like, why take on one big life event when I can take on 12? So big life event and a lot of time and energy being put into that while balancing launching the firm. So how do you balance just all of those things happening at once, especially when you're getting started and ramping very quickly?
It was shout out to my husband, Nabil, who has been so supportive of me and the firm this whole time, both time-wise and just like making sure that I eat when I come home from work. We got engaged in May of 2018, also the same month we launched the firm, and just figured we wanted to have a wedding because summer's gross and hot. I grew up in Los Angeles, so we got married in Los Angeles. And honestly, I spent a fair amount of time planning the wedding, but the focus was seriously on the firm and spending as much time as possible building that. And wedding planning kind of just came together sort of seamlessly with the help of my wonderful husband.
Okay, fair enough. Well, shout out to the hubby. I apologize for the misunderstanding. So, so can you talk to me just about well, first off, we haven't actually identified your niche market, which you have a very clear niche. So can you tell me who is your target market and who you generally work with?
Yeah, we have two niches. We have the creative side and then the tech side. And then kind of within that, we layer a business owner on top of that.
And do you find that people can be in both of those as well, or do they tend to be pretty mutually exclusive?
They can definitely be in both. And we often find that, a tech person is married to a creative entrepreneur. And they're very complementary of each other.
So talk to me about just like your overall planning process and what makes your planning process for these clients different than maybe what they're experiencing at another firm that is fee-only fiduciary and doing great work, but ultimately they don't have this same sort of niche market that you do.
Yeah, so we'll just compare ourselves to fee-only fiduciaries just because comparing to anything else would be silly. So compared to we have a 4-meeting, just like high level, we have a 4-meeting process for someone that signs. There's a get organized meeting with AJ, which is 30 to 45 minutes, and it's virtual. And it's essentially, we have given them a lot of homework after they sign the contract. And some people are better at homework than others. And what this meeting does is it allows AJ to go in and see what boxes they have and haven't checked, and to help them check the remaining boxes. And then we go through a 3-meeting development process from there after that, where we're going to be analyzing the information that we got from the client. They're each about 75 minutes long. They usually run over. They're a little bit long. Our clients start to get glossy-eyed towards the end of them. But we go through our spending and savings plan. We go through an insurance, all those things that we typically do. Our tech stack. Should we do tech stack?
Well, I was going to say one thing I think that is unique about our process maybe is we do a 20-minute investment education in the first meeting because a lot of our clients are coming in the door with no experience with a financial advisor. We don't see a lot of people unhappy with their advisor coming to us. These are clients who are thinking about this for the first time, either as an individual or maybe they're just engaged in merging finances as a household. So we're kind of starting at square one with a lot of our clients. So we have a PowerPoint presentation of various graphs and charts we've pulled together, basically explaining compound interest and why you should keep your fees low, things like that. So that kind of gives the client a chance to sort of like sit back and absorb before we start going into the plan, discussing their goals and talking about implementation.
I think that's a really great piece to emphasize around having a niche and why it matters, is because a lot of, if you're working with older, wealthier clients, they generally have had 1 to 3, experiences with financial advisors, some good, some bad. They may already have an advisors retiring, whatever. But that intro meeting is very different when someone has worked with a couple of advisors through their lifetime and have an idea of what financial planning is, and you can sort of compare and contrast other advisors. Like, you don't need to compare and contrast other advisors. Your prospective clients have no idea what anybody else does. So you can just really speak about yourself. And it's not about comparing to what others might be doing or their previous experiences. So I think that's a really great thing to note, and why, having a niche is so powerful is just because it changes even the conversation that happens in that introductory meeting.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. We don't compare ourselves to other advisors very often. We've only had 2 or 3 people come in with a current or former advisor. So yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. And then in terms of value proposition, the niches that we serve, what's really helpful in terms of value prop for the creative business owners, we own businesses, right? We've got employees. We're building up enterprise value within our companies. We're building out processes and workflows so that we can get everything out of our heads so that one day there will be enterprise value in the company. And in terms of on the tech side, we go deep on the stock option stuff. We use very advanced tools to build a diversification strategy for them that the client can choose between 10% diversification per year, 25 or 33. So we give them the crystal ball on what's going to happen in terms of cash flow, taxes, diversification, the value of a diversified portfolio. What happens if the stock goes up or down? What are your risks involved here and there? And it's not just, here's the tax consequences. There's no game of telephone between the tax guy and the investment guy. We are both of them, and we're having that conversation live with them in the meeting. And we do a lot of scenario preparation and review with them. And so choose your own adventure, so to speak, on how their options are going to become a diversified portfolio.
Yeah. So do you find tax is really at the center of that conversation in terms of value proposition? And I mean, because that's just a really tangible, we are saving you this much money to be able to validate the fee? Or does that even come up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it comes up all the time. What are you going to do for us? But I think that, tax is definitely at the center of the equity compensation conversation. And we're always confused about how it's possible that other certain advisors without a tax background are able to even advise on, advanced equity strategies, because it is so driven by tax.
Is that a big topic of conversation? Because that's its own niche, if you will, is equity-based compensation. So is that sort of a deep area of expertise and understanding for the two of you?
Yeah, when we say tech professionals, that's actually what we mean. It's not like we know much about product versus operations versus strategy. It's more so we know more about their options and why they should sell their non-quals as soon as they exercise them, and why they should sell their RSUs as soon as they exercise them, and how the minimum tax credit will be carried forward and be recoverable in future years. We do review of prior 2 years tax returns. One time we found a $50,000 tax credit that wasn't carried forward, and we paid our own fee for 10 years. So it's really easy when you tell a story like that to get buy-in on a $6,000 annual fee.
Yeah, no kidding. Where did you develop the knowledge? Is it really from just the CPA work? Because I understand that you probably covered some tax stuff in your CPA training, but not to that depth. I feel like have you just learned this on your own? Have you gone out? Are there some certification or education programs that have given you this base of knowledge?
So when I was at PwC, we audited. I was in Austin, so we were auditing and doing the tax work for tech companies. So we were doing the tax work for people that had ISOs and non-quals from the company side. And then when it came to New York, I had a bunch of friends that work at Spotify, and I was helping them with their incentive stock options as that company was rearing up for an IPO. So I was put these questions, you trial by fire, figure it out. It was basically how I learned it. And it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of books that we've read, and there's mystockoptions.com, of course. We're actually doing a presentation at XYPN Live, and we're going to provide a lot of the resources that we use to learn about this as one of the final slides. They can see if someone wants to move forward, what they can do. But yeah, really trial by fire, working within the PwC.
There's a designation, the certified equity professional, which we're both working on. Shane passed. There's 3 levels, sort of like the CFA exam, and Shane passed the first one, and I'm taking the test in November. So that's a more of a technical designation for advisors who are actually working within the company designing the plans, but it's definitely the gold standard in the equity comp space.
There's a lot of stuff that's not applicable to RIAs for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, we have some folks who, depending on where you're at, if you're in Silicon Valley, Austin, New York, like you're just naturally going to get these clients who show up and have these complexities. So if you want this to be an area of focus, I feel the same way about this as I do student loans and even, things like Social Security. Like you can't half-ass it. Like you better know what you're doing or you will make a big mistake. I mean, I remember a client coming to me that had bad advice to exercise stock options early, hit short-term capital gains instead of long-term, cost him $115,000. And then I got him and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but he had already exercised all the options. So it didn't matter anymore when it came to those. But that is a deep level of understanding. And I promise the client will remember you're the one who said exercise. And if they weren't supposed to, they will remember you're the one who made that recommendation.
And we find it a lot of fun. So we have a lot of passion around it, building out those plans.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun at Brooklyn FI.
Just in general.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier, which I think is so real and raw, if you will, and that is the imposter syndrome that comes with doing those first few financial plans and I will say, being someone who worked, I mean, I didn't spend very many years in financial planning firms, but I had worked in a couple of firms. This has been my entire career. I experienced the imposter syndrome of who am I to give a financial plan to someone that first time you deliver it. So talk to me about about that emotional experience and how you've been able to overcome, if you've been able to, that feeling or if that's something you're still struggling with.
Definitely still struggling with it. Adding the CFP marks after my name has helped a little bit with the internal doubt. But I think what's been helpful in overcoming it is just being honest and learning to be honest with clients. We are a new firm. I am a career changer. I've only been doing this for a little over 2 years. I don't have 10 years of experience. And instead of trying to prop that up and say, I have all this experience, it's more of, look, I was where you were recently and I know where you're coming from and I can empathize with you. And I think a lot of clients connect with that realness, if you want to call it that. So that sort of helped overcome the always present imposter syndrome.
How about for you, Shane? Because I feel like coming from a tax background, it's easy to say like, oh, you'll be fine. But it sounds like you have experienced the same feeling of that imposter syndrome, that feeling of inadequacy of, am I really the one who should be doing this planning?
Yeah. Well, I had an early dose of that when I started Mason Tax, and I started doing this type of work, learning how to do things on the fly in tax land. So that muscle is kind of strong for me. I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe men have less of an exposure because they're just numbed down, they're just overconfident. And also I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now at this point. And just like looking at the market, and everyone tells you, like all the coaches, and it's been pounded in from Carl Richards and whatnot, how a fee-only, quote unquote, real financial advisor should not be experiencing imposter syndrome because they're better than 99% of the people out there. I'm just like kind of like repeating that to myself in my head as we go through this. Like, we're doing real work and we need to do it, and you just need to get over it, man, and just deliver this value and get on with it.
It is a good point that I hate the word should, right? Don't should on yourself. But in the end, imposter syndrome is something that we all deal with, I think. Because if you don't, then you're probably on the arrogant side of things. Maybe there's someone in between. I shouldn't say that. But I think we all experience it. But most people don't see it. What they see is, look at Brooklyn FI. It's this amazing company. They're growing so fast. Like, they've got their stuff together. They clearly know everything that they're doing. And it's easy to see that. But the reality is it's not that way, and yes, it is successful, but we all struggle. And I think and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's important for listeners to hear that, especially if you're in the middle of that, you're like, oh, I'm the only one that feels like I'm struggling. Everyone else is successful. Like, just know that everyone is experiencing that emotion, that feeling.
For sure. Yeah. I feel for everyone at XYPN that's going through that.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about, and if you've had conversations around what the future of the firm is? Because you've hit a point now, I have in my notes that y'all have hit a recurring revenue number of need to scan down here, 250,000 in projected revenue. So you've hit the point where like you're no longer thinking, I assume like, oh, I could go get a job and make this amount of money, which was what we all did when we were making like $5,000 a year. Um, so you've hit the point of, I'll say, quote unquote, success, that you've hit the point where it's no longer about going and making more money working somewhere else. So can you tell me about the conversations around what you are thinking for the business, what you want the business to be when it grows up?
We're still working on that. Yeah, the current default that we're working on is to continue to grow, add advisors, build a business and an enterprise, and become business managers. But you listen to a lot of podcasts of solopreneurs that are doing so well, Dan Goldie, various other individual advisors that are just rolling a practice by themselves and have 80% margins. You're like, wow, okay, maybe maybe not. So we haven't decided yet. We still have capacity to fill up AJ's book. We can add about 60 to 70. We don't really have individual books. It's a Brooklyn FI client, not one of our clients. But we think 80 households per advisor is the cap. So we've still got space for quite a bit of revenue. And I think we'll make that decision when we get closer to that. But
yeah, it's going to creep up on us pretty fast.
Yeah.
It is, because it's your growth rate. You're going to be there about, this time or the end of next year, so you basically have a year to sort of figure it out and make some decisions there.
Thanks for that. Now I feel great.
No pressure.
Start the conversation now, right? I don't want to be talking to you in a year and it's like, oh man, please, you should have told us. Yeah, because you are growing. And I think it's really important, if I can put on my business coaching hat, like it's really important to not look at the Dan Goldies and I'll say all the people on Kitsis' podcast who are making like crazy amounts of money and working by themselves. Like, good for them, because they built the business that was right for them. And it's so easy to look at them and go, oh, that's the business I should build. And I made that mistake. I was like, I'm going to build a financial planning firm and work 10 hours a week and have $1 million clients and make $200K. Like, it'll be perfect. And then I got bored. Because like that wasn't for me. That was someone else's dream, and I was just trying to copy it. And so and it's really hard to know, but just trying to be as clear as you can on, what do you want your day-to-day to be? Do you want your day-to-day to be, hey, we're financial planners and that's what we do all day, and like occasionally do some businessy stuff? Like, great, you can be solos and do that. If you're like, this run the business thing is kind of fun, like I want to hire, I want to scale, I want to create an awesome business to work at. Like, you can do that too. It's just a different business. So
yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned the Kitsis podcast, because every time, is it Tuesdays that it gets released? Mm-hmm. Every Tuesday afternoon on Slack, we're like, oh, we should do this. Because it's like, whoever was on the episode most recently, like, their life sounds rad. Let's do that. Pivot.
And it does sound awesome. And it like I said, my encouragement for all listeners and the two of you is live your dream, and that's what's so cool about entrepreneurship, and particularly in financial planning, is that we have the ability to build the business the way that you want. It's hard to build like a lifestyle restaurant where you can, if you started a restaurant, you can't just like come and go. Like, you're there every day, and you're going to close on Mondays and people are going to yell at you because you're not available on Mondays. Like, you're really tied to the business. The cool thing about financial planning is you have that flexibility to really build your life the way that you want and use the business to support it. And so too often I see people start heading down a direction that's wrong for them, and then they hate their business, which, it didn't have to be that way.
I think we should, 100%. I appreciate that. I think we should also mention that we have a secret fantasy of selling the company to Ritholtz Wealth Management in about 7 years.
They will be listening in now. So
write the check.
Come have drinks with us at Flugers.
First time we have sold a firm on the podcast, we'll take our 7% brokerage fee. Thank you. It was in the agreement. No, that's awesome. Is there so I don't know how secret it is now, but is that actually something that's on your mind? Is like, yeah, we could see rolling into a larger firm and not being, the people who are running the business and doing the work?
Yeah, I think it's one of the paths we've talked about the most, just because, as we build this business that's, seen pretty explosive growth, we're filling a niche that hasn't really previously been filled in this area. Yeah, it's been appealing to see how much bigger we could get, and then how we could really bring that value to a much, much larger firm, and even expand the Brooklyn FI ethos to a much wider swath of people.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is, you start looking at like, all right, well, we could have a bigger impact and you could just grow the firm to be and you two are CEO and COO of a really big firm, or you say like, we want to have a bigger impact, but we don't want to be the ones who are building and scaling and running the business. Like that's its own skill set and passion and let somebody else do that. And I see advisors take both paths. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's my belief about entrepreneurship is that's one of the greatest myths of running a business and being an entrepreneur is that there's a right answer. And there's just not. Like there's a continuum of choices and it's just what's going to work for you. So what are some of the things that the two of you are working on over the next, I'll say 12 to 24 months? Sounds like doing some transitioning work with the tax practice and getting it a little more aligned with the philosophy of the financial planning firm. But any other big projects or hiring or things that are on the horizon?
Yeah, I think hiring is on the horizon. We hired an associate, like Shane mentioned, who works half-time at Brooklyn FI. So I'm sort of downloading my brain onto him to provide some of the support in the basic plan building and admin there. But I could see us hiring an associate advisor within the next year, as we focus more on growth and business development, as we sort of start to sharpen that edge of where we want to be. So Shane and I can have more time to talk about the business itself, not necessarily like keeping track of the client experience. We've spent a lot of hours on our process, revising it, talking about it, testing it out with clients. So I'm excited to move on from that phase where our process is great. And, it was a lot of hard work to get it to that place. I'm excited for the next step.
Anything from your end, Shane?
No, I'm not going to work on the business. Yeah, I mean, I've got a million ideas flying through my head all the time. This is all I think about 24/7, which is cool and also a problem. AJ tries to get me to unplug all the time. We're working on that. We did take a 2-week. We've given ourselves quarterly 2-week vacations is what we're trying to do so that we stop working 24/7. My last 2-week vacation, I worked from home for 7 of those days. But we're trying to get better at that, trying to give ourselves a break. So we're not working 7 days a week. But hiring and getting workflows ironed out on the tax side will definitely help me out. And then just continuing to grow. Yeah, continuing to grow. We might do a podcast. We might do some workshops. We might do some video recording. We might do a mixture of all 3 of those things. Yeah, so we got a lot of things in the works.
Video podcast workshop, perhaps.
Video podcast workshop, yeah.
Video podcast workshop. Love it. Do the video, rip the audio out. Hey, creating content's the hard part. Recycling it and reusing it and repurposing is the easy part.
And then, I would really love to hire honestly a data analytics visual, someone that could help make. A lot of our clients are very visual, and it's very hard to get good visuals to explain complicated topics like compound interest or the value of diversification and whatnot. I would love to hire someone that's good at that stuff, as also a planner, also a tax person. Like Kitsis's team probably has some strong people that put together those graphs and charts that I just can't do. So I just want to get communication across to serve our clients better, but that's just a fantasy.
Yeah, it is a great point that visuals in financial planning are really challenging because it is so much data. It's why I love Carl Richards' work, right? Because he simplifies such complex topics, which maybe that's the skill set that we all need when it comes to delivering financial advice. Because in the end, it's like, here's your Monte Carlo simulation probabilities. And people are like, that's great. What does it mean? Can I retire or not? Or can I buy the house or not? Is really what it comes down to.
We have a few fun visuals. We definitely use a Carl Richards sketch in our presentations. We use bunnies to illustrate compound interest. So our clients really glom onto those stories that we can tell visually.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, anything you can do, especially we all learn differently. So I'm auditory. I love anything I hear, I remember, but other people are visual. Some people are tactile. So also just sort of adapting to how people generally get information. Sounds like because you're working with a lot of creatives, they probably are really visual and just need to be able to see it. And again, seeing financial planning, help me live my great life. That's a hard thing to really visualize. But when you get it and when you see it and you experience it, there's a reason we have such high client retention rates. And it's because once you experience it, you'll never leave it. But getting to that point is the challenge. As we're sort of coming to an end of the podcast, since you've listened to every episode, I know you're prepared for the final questions. So as my business coach likes to say, I'll start with a brave one and go left. So whoever wants to start with answering the question of, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self? That one thing that you've learned that you wish you had known. What do you think that one piece of advice would be?
I did not prepare for this.
You did not prepare? I didn't either. I think what I was thinking about this morning, and I had two whole other careers before I found this career. And I think I just wish I had found it earlier. I wish I could go back and tell myself to, open your eyes, don't just contribute 2% to your 401k, like take charge of this. Money growing up was a huge source of tension in my family. My parents were divorcing for 11 years because of money. And it was just, we never talked about it. And it was very stressful. So I wish I had discovered the other way, and how, once you understand money and once you can use it as a tool to, make your life better, then you can have a more positive relationship to it. And I think if I had discovered that 5-10 years ago, I think my life would have been very different. And I'm just really grateful to be in the place I am now. Meeting Shane was very fortuitous, and we've been building this amazing company and place to work and place to live in for the past couple of years. And I see a long future for it.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's not something advice I would give to myself. It's just probably just to tell myself that everything's going to be okay. Because I don't feel like an accountant. I've never felt like an accountant. I don't have any close friends that are accountants. It was just the best degree at Ole Miss. And then I became a CPA at PwC, and I had not a lot of close friends that were accountants, and I still don't. And
Can I tell the hipster accountants story?
No. And then, just now where I'm at with my life is I feel in control. Everything's moving in the right direction. I got a lot of colleagues and friends within XYPN that I'm huge fans of, and everything's cool. Everything's great.
So just relax and enjoy the journey. As entrepreneurs, it's so easy for us to always be thinking about what's next, or what's 5 years out, or what's 10 years out, or, oh my goodness, are the decisions that we're making today going to make it harder to sell to Ritz-Holtz in 10 years? What are we doing? And it's just it is a fun journey, and it can be, and it's stressful. The emotional highs and lows, no matter how many times I warn people, you'll still be surprised when you experience it, but this is a roller coaster. And I can tell you, being on the other side of it and starting to grow a larger business, it doesn't get any less bumpy. It just changes. And so, enjoy the ride while you're on it, and just relax. So I appreciate the advice from both of you. So awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time to come on the show. It's been awesome getting to learn more about your business, and excited to hear how things go over the next year or two as you continue to grow and scale. So thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
When it comes to compliance, most financial advisors want to run in the opposite direction. But compliance doesn't have to be that big scary monster hiding under your bed. Our free risk assessment guide will walk you through how to perform a risk assessment one step at a time. Learn how to perform a proper risk assessment and get access to our risk matrix and risk assessment table worksheets developed by XY Planning Network's in-house compliance team. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/risk assessment to download your copy today. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.